Almost done. I don't know what to do. What button do I push? Go for it.
Hopefully he's backstage somewhere, but yeah, welcome to the stage, Paul. I'm sure you can give yourself a much better introduction than I will be able to. So yeah, when you're ready, just let me know when you want to move to the next slide.
So are we live now? Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. Can I control the slides, or are you controlling them?
If you want to share your screen, Paul, you're very welcome.
If I can, please, just so that I can pace through it.
Great. I'll take mine off then, and if yours is ready,
I'll great. Thank you.
Over to you.
Now I just need to figure out how to share my screen. There we go. And hopefully everybody can see that.
Yeah, all looks great.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is going to be slightly different from all of the good work that people have done earlier on. Quick introduction of myself. I'm Paul Meenan, and what we're going to do is get straight on to a topic that we think about and we do every single minute of every single day. We're going to talk about, if my computer works, risk. Please forgive the use of the witty photos. I do like to use visualizations. Not my fault, blame my friends. But yeah, we're going to talk about risk in the workplace, corporate risk, health and safety risk, risk of the industry, risk in the trade. It's a huge issue. There's not enough conversations about risk. But before we go on, just want to introduce myself very quickly. My name's Paul Meenan. I'm from Tottenham, very proud of that. I trained as a Sparky. I fell into site and project engineering. I moved on to project and asset management roles, had to level up and walk the talk and all that good stuff. I'm from the rail sector. I currently work in the rail sector. I'm very fortunate. I've worked across all the major modes of transport, London Underground, DLR, Network Rail, and the train operators, which has given me a really unique perspective that not many people are fortunate to get, where I've worked as a contractor, subcontractor, tier one contractor, and a client. I am very proud of the fact I founded a group of friends where we operate something called the E5 group, where we go around as volunteers independently trying to support, educate, and inform folks. I'm a chartered fellow with the Institute of Engineering Technology. I am a professional registration advisor, interviewer, and a CPD assessor. I'm also currently rewiring my home. I'm also proud of the fact I've won the IET Volunteer of the Year medal in 2019. And if you could summarize my career, mainly technical assurance compliance in major project delivery for the last 10 plus years. Now, I work for a company called Trenitalia C2C. This is the route that I get to look after all the pipes and wires on. We have 26 stations, 76 platforms, 25 car parks. 80% of our passengers are commuters. We have 125,000 passengers a day, obviously pre-COVID, and 46 million journeys a year. Now, most people actually think C2C is city to coast. It's actually not, but we've kind of adopted it as, yeah, okay, sure, why not? We operate something quite unique where we operate a full repair insure national rail contract with a 99-year lease. What that means is we are Network Rail. So on that route, we operate as the railway infrastructure manager, not just a train operator, which is quite good. What do? Well, I've got 20 lifts to look after, soon to be 30. I've got 2 escalators. I've got all the plumbing. I've got all the electrical, all the ventilation, all the fire detection, active and passive. I've got third-party systems to look after, advertising, gate lines, CCTV, driver-only operated equipment, PAT testing, PPM regimes and contractors, access and security systems, and projects. Just to give you a clue, we have 5 stations being either demolished or in the works to be renewed, or brand new stations coming on board. We also have 5 brand new access for all schemes. So there is a lot of infrastructure works, a lot of electrical works being done on my route. Now, if you're wondering what I do, other than rambling on at high speed, because I'm trying to get as much as I can in here today, this is just a quick example of one of the things that I do. I look at asset conditions as an asset manager, and I look at the risk of owning the electrical mechanical systems over a period of time. Now, for most of us who are electrical managers, we like to use the 4 codes. C1, I can see it, I can touch it, it will kill me now. C2, one thing fails, something's going to hurt somebody. C3, you need to have a little bit more of a look. And FI, I need more time. I use these as part of my risk management tools. for everything I do in the workplace. Now, if you look at that fuse spur there, that's obviously life expired. And sadly, that's got to a failed state before the end of its designed life. So what I try and do is I try and observe the optimum condition to failed state and try and get these codes further along so that I can intervene before it becomes dangerous. That's value in asset management. So that's kind of an example of some of the things that I do. But we're here to talk about risk. That chap's evidently very risk averse or aware, possibly not. Now let's define what is risk, because with any term or definition, we have to define it. And ISO, the British Standards Institute, have a standard BS ISO 31000, and it defines risks as the effect of uncertainty and objectives, which, as you can imagine, every electrician in the country is probably talking like that in their canteens. It's a language we don't use. It's a language we don't talk about. The nearest we get to it is when we're doing risk assessments and method statements. But from a business perspective, from an employer perspective, that is risk, the effect of uncertainty on objectives. And if you want to buy those two documents, it's 300 of the Queen's pounds. Now, with that very gentle introduction to risk, there's obviously some notes. And in those notes, we'll recognize keywords like deviation from the expected, positive and negative. It can address opportunity or threats. Objectives can have different aspects and can apply at different levels, which we'll cover. Risk is expressed in the terms of sources, potential events, consequence and likelihood, which we immediately go, oh yeah, I've seen risk assessments that cover that. And we'll show you. Some senior management, so when you go into major organizations, up into the nosebleeds with the strategic thinkers, they'll use stuff like this. It's a bow tie method. It's from the old 2009 ISO standard. It was pretty decent because it told you to establish a context, identify the risk, analyze the risk, evaluate the risk, treat it, monitor it, and communicate. Nice and simple. However, ISO world being as they are, everything's about continuous evolution and improvement. So this is now the modern risk management process, where we have a scope, a context, criteria for risk management. We identify the risk, we analyze, we evaluate, we treat, we record, report, we monitor, review, and we communicate and consult. So it's just a different visualization for some very familiar principles. Now, question for everybody, and you can answer this in the comments or in the question bits, but how many of us update the risk registers every month? I know I do, and every single month I add something to it. It's a really good tool to keep your pencil sharp and make sure you don't drift in with the normal chaos that is most electrical managers' working lives. One quick note for anybody watching this: if you can't afford £300, please go to the Engineering Council's website, download the guidance on risk. It's really, really good, free available document. The one thing you will love is part 3, comply with legislation and codes, but seek improvements. Work from the standards. If you're at work and you are arguing over how to comply with a standard, not from a standard, you have a bigger risk problem. Could be identified as competency, could be an attitude, but you have a bigger problem. So we remember that risk is the effect of uncertainty on objectives. I like to make it simple, Janet and John type style. Certain risk and uncertain risk. That's how I define risk. There's certain risk is positive, and negative risk is, or uncertain risk is negative. Now, certain risk is the stuff we know about. I know that I own a door access system which is vandalized on a high-rise building, to use the last chap's examples. That's a certain risk. It's going to be vandalized. So I can treat that risk. I can measure that risk. I can manage that risk. The uncertain one is if somebody does something to hack into our intranet or some other thing we might not have thought of due to the interconnectivity and ever-evolving smartening of systems. Here's an example, because let's take this back down to the shop floor where it's really important. Here's an earth bar. Everybody watching hopefully recognizes an earth terminal, and an earth terminal is a certain risk. We know that risk because earthing is very important for the effectiveness of the protective measure. It earths our electrical installation, it allows our bonds to be attached and keeps us safe. We look at it, we inspect it. Now that earth bar obviously is a little bit undersized and unloved, but fundamentally it's something that we manage, and we manage the risk well. However, when you use modern equipment and modern techniques, you can see very clearly, I've got 19.5 amps measuring on a conductor that should only really be carrying current when there is leakage, normal leakage from the installation, or fault current, not just 19 amps consistently. That's a risk. That's an uncertain risk. Our certain risk was we know there's an earth bar, we need to maintain it. Our uncertain risk is an unknown. How do we manage it? Well, then we level up. And my thermographer is watching this. Hello. We apply thermography. So what we do is we get a more in-depth use of our senses, because electricians use their senses, but to me and many other people, the sixth sense of electrician is some intrusive equipment, use of technology to supplement our senses. And you can see straight away on that conductor there is a problem. So it's an uncertain risk that we're using technology to inform us so that we can manage it better. So one of the biggest challenges with risk is, obviously risk is defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. But the biggest problem is it's any uncertainty. Because what happens is, in a lot of employers, and I'm not tarring everyone with the same brush, and just to be clear, these views are mine and not of my employers. Okay, this is just based on 25 years experience in the industry. It's any uncertainty that matters. There is always a natural comfort to go towards the certain risk rather than the uncertain. And that's the problem. You then don't have an effect. You don't have an understanding of any uncertainty that matters. It matters because it affects objectives. I want to run a railway. I want to run trains on time. I want to ensure my building services are safe. If I don't know, or I don't have enough knowledge of my infrastructure, it then creates a risk. I need to take that risk and manage it. But I need to do that as part of a bigger team. Very briefly, I'm going to cover this. Risk assessment can be known to many people in different forms. This is directly from the HSE website. It's a risk assessment template. What it does is it creates a circle of understanding. What's the hazards? Who's getting harmed? What are you doing already to control the risk? What more do you need to do? Who's assigned to it? When's it going to be done by? And is it done? It closes a loop of closing and understanding that risk. These are the smaller site-based type risks. You can then go into the bigger type risks. Now, the railways loves a risk matrix, 5x5, 3x3, severity versus probability. So if we use the example of the earth bar with the conductor, is there a probability of current appearing on my earthing? Well, normally my risk would be highly unlikely, and the impact of it would be minor. So it would be green. But now I've measured that, it's very likely, because I obviously have found a constant current on my earthing. So the impact of that I need to then assess as, well, there could be a major impact, which takes me into an area which is not acceptable. So I then need to mitigate that. I need to manage that. I need to control that. Now, the whole purpose of these matrices is to take assessed common sense conversations and drag your scoring from the red into the green or into the amber. And if you're in the amber, the railway industry uses a term called ALARP, as low as reasonably practicable. You cannot do ALARP until you document and clearly quantify every single thought process around the subject. And that's very, very important, because a lot of people in rail industry are very well known for using the term ALARP, but with no paperwork behind it. Some people like to visualize risk on a 3x3 matrix: minor impact, major impact, low probability versus high probability. This is all part of the balancing act of measuring and managing risk. Everybody does it differently, and everybody's consistently doing it. So I want to give you a quick example of something that actually happened in my career. Portable appliance risk, as you can see, IT, God love them in all their forms. Here's an example of a member of staff who was shocked. So what there was, it was an electric heater that was purchased online, and our wonderful admin lady who sat at the front desk of our offices, she was freezing cold during the winter, so she's put the heater under her desk. The element inside had come loose and was touching down to the live parts. And if you can see from the plug, it's a European plug, a German one, where the earth conductor is expected to put into a European receptacle where the earth pin sticks out and makes contact. What the company did was buy a European adapter with an insulated earth pin. As you can imagine, that resulted in a minor shock and no major injury, thank God. But when I came into work later that day, I was told about it, and I was also told the senior management team weren't fussed and told them to carry on. That is absolutely unacceptable, and there are a few people out there who remember the words that were exchanged. That is an unacceptable behavior, but it's also a really bad sign of a poor risk management culture and a poor risk appetite. So this is one event that happened, and these sorts of things, minor, but why did that happen? The person procuring it weren't competent. Now, everyone who works in our industry who does M&E in a client or principal contractor role knows one of the biggest challenges we've got is explaining our job and how important our stuff is in amongst the noise that our industry generates, especially in construction and infrastructure management. And it turned out the office manager bought it and had no qualifications or competence whatsoever. So what was the risk assessed? Well, there was none. So you got to ask the question, are some employers oblivious to risk? Well, yeah, that incident wouldn't have happened if they weren't oblivious to risk. And there is so much ever evolving and changing in the workplace. It's very, very difficult to catch up and keep up. Now, in a workplace, there are typical types of risk that can be found. They're illegal. So a company will have £500 a day lawyers talking about contract risks and legal risks. One of them makes a mistake, that filters into the supply chain, or if they transfer risk onto a contractor who may not be competent in understanding contract clauses, you could get a small works contractor taking on too much and not realizing. Financial risk, it's a daily battle for most electrical managers, I think. But engineering, do we have suitable engineers? Are they competent? I'll get onto that. Regulatory risk, changes of law and legislation. Do we put that in our risk registers? What about operational risk? I think on the railways, we're brilliant at it. Occasionally we get it wrong, but I think we're getting better and better and better. Asset and infrastructure risk, failure of equipment. That fuse board there that's burnt out, that was a failure of an asset. Environmental risk, the need to ensure that what we're doing is environmentally considered and compassionate. What about safety and health? But more importantly on the health, mental and physical. We're not really, as an industry, even though it's Mental Health Month, we're not really on top of the mental health issue that COVID has created and also toxic workplaces create. Quality is a massive risk to a business. You know, you get the quality wrong and it can destroy a company. Public are risk. Your traveling public, your users of your equipment and facilities, even social media. But the last two I find are quite interesting: management and competence. Where's the risk register entries for lack of competence within the management systems? Also, what I found in my career, I've spent a lot of my time going around fixing things, chasing things, making sure it doesn't go wrong anymore. So I've got a unique insight on this. And one of the things I found is procurement is a key risk. And I'm going to say this out loud, forgive me, but procurement is one of the worstly applied things in the construction industry I've ever seen in my life. I get the intent of why it's there and it's a good thing, but I've never seen it properly applied. It's just become almost a quango in itself. And it just costs more money and also makes more chaos on the work. So that's just my personal opinion. Contract risk, collaboration. We now have standards for collaboration, a standard to get on with each other. It's now an ISO standard. It used to be a BS 11,000, I think it was, but it's now an ISO 1000 standard for collaboration. If we get our scopes wrong, our remit, our extent limitation, who considers that? How many clients issue an order for contractors to go and do an EICR, but don't define the extent limitation? How many? Probably 90%, 95%. All depends if the client's got the competency on board. They just assume if they go out and get a company with a logo, that's enough. The clients have a duty to take stuff on board and manage and control risk. Financial incentives can drive bad behaviors. I've seen that in many an employer. Toxic workplaces, they exist. I've seen them. Most people, a lot of people have. And if you don't, good on you. Stay with that employer. They're wonderful people. Poor safety culture. And we'll come on to that. Cost, program driven. One of the key things I don't like when I interview people, I ask them cost, quality, safety, and program. What's the most important? If the first two are program and cost, you don't get the job. Simple. Supplier quality. As we said, if a supplier doesn't get their quality right or their technical compliance, huge issue. Ignorance and negligence from people who are scared. Human emotions. We are human beings with feelings. We are not corporate machines that just churn out ISOs left, right, and center. We have feelings. We have weaknesses. The strength is acknowledging that. Cheap wins, going for the quick wins can be a short-term culture, and also a lack of due diligence. I've seen that in my career, and I think if you look at major projects like Metronet and other major projects in rail, you'll see there's been a lack of a lot of things in that. But they're mega projects. They need a lot more consideration. Coming back to electrical safety. So we all know C1, C2, C3, FI. We know these are key risks. I actually use these as my risk criteria for everything electrical. I take, if it's lifts, if it's escalators, whatever, I will recognize and understand. I will put it into these buckets and then I schedule my priority. C1, it gets done immediately. There's no excuses. I will not accept C1. C2, it's got to be done within a couple of days, or it's got to be risk treated. C3, I don't like having hundreds of C3s. They're getting done. They're just in a queue. FI, I treat them the same as C2. Go out, spend more time. That's how I do it. Now, I do that because I'm a qualified electrician. I have a level of competency and understanding in the blue book. Apparently, that's a rare thing in our industry, which is a worry. Although I know lots of clients who've got lots of intelligence, but just overwhelming infrastructure. One of the problems we have in our industry is the terminology used. Lots of people in the workplace will use the term electrical test inspect, electrical installation condition report, periodic inspection. And this is where we go wrong. Electrical test inspect is a contract term. It's been sat in contracts for years and years and years and years and recycled. No one tests before they inspect. Any electrician laughs at that. But that's a contract term, and we need to adapt and overcome. The activity is the periodic activity, which is in 7671. The outcome of it is the EICR report. The problem is every 5 years. And this is where we fail. This is a risk that a lot of employers are carrying if they don't have competent persons to action. So if you look at the bottom of the electrical installation condition report, section F, I've got it at the bottom of the screen here. It says right at the bottom, subject to the necessary remedial action being taken, I or we recommend. And this is where the 5 years becomes dangerous. Who reads that bit? Who then implements it? Does the inspector have assurance that the works will be done? And that's something every employer needs to go away and look at, because I have found looking at EICRs, there are bigger problems at hand. And let me give you an example. So, no names mentioned. An inspection regime, including the EICR, found 4,975 defects. And that includes all disciplines. So there was about 3,900 on the EICR, but we coded everything else and it went into a work bank. We then inserted an enhanced level of risk reduction measures. That's way too much across, obviously, infrastructure and projects. So we then went in more intrusive, looked further into the detail. We then added 4,062 codable defects, 9,037 in 2 years. That's legacy of not doing risk management very well. So that's obviously being dealt with. Please see the irony in the picture there. Caution, heater may be hot, but that has been dealt with. That's being risk managed and risk treated, and that number is now far reduced, which is good. Do employers do enough? In my opinion, no. Some employers do, and I've seen some cracking employers, but sadly in the electrical industry they are few and far between, and I know a lot of sparks would probably be nodding. Are we blind to electrical safety? Well, I think sometimes we are. Now those people on those photos, wow, I think everybody's seen the guy on the right in Spain or Portugal or when they've gone on holiday. But we are blind to electrical safety, and that's a major issue for me, because we can be blind in many ways and places. We rely on our senses. Now, you look at that picture there. That was actually a photo that was taken last year. There was an earth conductor that was bypassing a tenant's board, all ripped out, obviously, but the earth conductor was alive. They were bypassing straight into the RCD. Madness. The tenant, no inspection regime, but the inspection regime's on the client. How many contracts have tenants in their infrastructure or third parties where they say you are responsible for all the safety? Who monitors it? Who checks it? Because these companies are out to make profit, and sometimes profit, the only way of making it in modern society is by not doing stuff. I've always had the view that electrical contractors, some of them, not all of them, will make money by how much they don't do rather than what they do. So here's another piece of infrastructure. We should all recognize this. This is a three-phase power supply into an office block, into a railway station, into a building, and it looks fine, looks brand new. Yeah, okay, apart from the towels, might want to do something with that, but there's nothing wrong with that until we actually get really serious about risk treatment and risk management. That's not fine. Okay, the operating temperature is 23.1, but you can tell from that picture and from the thermal grading that there's damage to the contacts. It's actually the terminal where the conductor was in the bottom. But we didn't know that until we actually did thermal imaging. So there are hidden dangers. There are hidden risks. Now, everybody looks at that and goes, well, that's just a bit of grey plastic. It's no big bother. It is if you can't run a railway. It is if you can't collect revenue. Your business objectives are gone because you've allowed a point of failure that you didn't consider risk on. Now, one of the reasons behind this, and this is my opinion, are the existing laws complied with sufficiently, and is there sufficient enforcement? No. The HSE in our electrical safety roundtable has made the point that the regulations and the laws are there, but people do not comply with them, or maybe because there's not enough enforcement of them, there's not enough surveillance of them, and people are playing a game of risk that they might not be competent to play. Those who do try that game of risk tend to not get away with it, and then we see them in safety bulletins that get passed around the industry. Can more be done? Yes. In my professional view, the electricity at work regulations need a refresh. They need to be an independent committee, sit down, have a look at updating for current technologies, current practices, and more importantly, just putting it back in the spotlight so that people can be retrained and refresh their application of what is their defence in a court of law, Regulation 29. Now, I'm going to get on to this tragedy. Michael Adamson, I should never be talking about this chap, and I should never have to talk about anyone, but we're very fortunate and privileged to have Louise Adams on our ESR, and I'd like to publicly thank her for being on it, and she has helped refocus us when our conversations have drifted. Louise is a safety speaker and an eBosch ambassador and a lawyer, and please go and look at her website and also look at the Family Against Corporate Killers. I'm embarrassed that an organisation like that should even exist. So if anybody says to me we do enough for risk management, try telling that to Michael. Simple. We're not doing enough. One of the things we did as part of our initial ESR was, how can we win the hearts and minds of people? Because for all the processes and everything else, we are people. So what we did was, in most major construction, there is this 5 points of PPE. You must wear all the PPE. So we thought, well, why couldn't it be a sixth one? And instill into the minds of anyone working on or near electrical systems that the sixth point of PPE should be your lock-off kit. It drives a conversation for safe systems of work and all the good things that we should be doing as a norm and not become complacent with. However, and this is where it gets controversial, and this is where my opinions of 25 years of going grey and losing my hair count. The construction industry is fundamentally flawed. It is run by people who may not have ever held a screwdriver, a hammer, or held a shovel, or worked in a trade, and there is not enough shop floor mentality in there and understanding. There's a gap. It's been created over the years. Client expectation, client budget. That happens a lot. Cost versus time versus budget. This was an image that I've used previously to describe the construction industry. The client is the chap in the middle with the Union Jack. The principal contractor is mucking him around. The electrical mechanical contractor in the corner. The architects, the designers. It almost becomes like a Royal Rumble for anyone who's a wrestling fan. That's the image I use. People are consistently in conflict in the construction industry. Why? Because we don't get it right. We're not managing risk correctly. The best measure of a construction project is at the end, the project is delivered, there's no snags, everyone goes, well, that was different. We're not fighting, we all like each other, we're all getting on. That's great. How often does that happen? How often are people mopping up? Just some visuals, really. Client beef, client budget. Are we communicating effectively? What about expectations versus reality? I expect that on my railway. Do I get that? Occasionally. Do I need to put better risk management and risk treatments in? Absolutely. But one of the things that is key in construction industry is change management. There's expectations to work together and move the goalposts. People and small works contractors have goalposts moving them unfairly, which costs them money. And the clients and the persons ordering the work don't take enough responsibility because they're not risk managing. They're not treating risk sufficiently. Or the person in charge who may be leading the project is just too scared or incompetent to have that honest conversation. It then creates a cyclical snowball effect across the project. Everybody's familiar with this. This is the famous picture of the swing. The customer explained it as a 3-tier. The project leader understood it as something that wouldn't work. The analyst designed it one way. The business consultant described it another way. The project wasn't very well documented. The billing was chaos, and how it was supported. It's just a funny visual because it's so sadly true, and virtually everyone I've ever met in my career we've put the world to rights on this. So again, I'll ask you all, how many of us think about this? How many of us know to think about this when we're assessing risk? The things that we know that can go wrong, the things we may not have been aware of before. Ever-changing risk, as I said earlier on, there's a wonderful mega clamp there, clamped around an earthing conductor, 21.45 amps. That's a risk treatment I never had to manage before, but I do now. Let's look at when I switch the power off. For those who are thinking, yeah, this is terrible. Well, let's look at ever-changing risk. There's the power supply completely isolated from the building, and there's still power flowing through it. So how do I disconnect and separate all sources of energy in a manner that is disconnected and secure? I can't, because there's still energy flowing. But I have control of the installation, don't I? Or do I? Henceforth, my thoughts on maybe revamping and relooking some of our legislation. One of the biggest challenges is this: sign blindness, badge collecting, We are obsessed as clients and industry at collecting badges. And I can tell you this now, ISO 9006 policies and procedures, keeping records. My mum could get ISO registered. There's some great documents, don't get me wrong. I'm not taking them anything away from the individual requirements, but a lot of this stuff in these ISOs is really common sense driven. So they're great guides, and I would highly recommend that people look at these because it helps level up your knowledge. But a lot of employers look at collecting the badges and using them as a shield. We're ISO registered, we must be brilliant. Don't think so, because all these are about is ever emerging continuous improvement. We've got to get good at that. If we choose not to look at that, we're not checking and acting, part of our improvement cycle. And I think one of the reasons why is we're now become sign blind. We've now become risk blind. You look at every company, every hi-fi, we've got, let's get to work safe, beyond zero. How can you, beyond zero? Minus 100%, a culture of safety, stop, think, act, think safe, work safe, home safe, safe always for everyone. That's the C2C one. I love it. Really simple, common sense. Zero harm. Let's make safety personal. Are we becoming oblivious to that? Are these things stopping us from thinking? Just look at some of the posters that are out there in the industry. Think safety, no authorized entry. Great demarcation, information, instruction, training, supervision, all the fundamental things we've got to get right. But are people following it? Are they becoming oblivious to it? You look at some of the networks. Be bright, stay safe. Great little visual, but do we need to be doing that? Look at the electric shock first aid procedure poster. If that's in every single switch room, it's great, it's in there, but also have we failed in our risk management? Should we be allowing people to be in a position where they are going to get electric shock? And I'm not saying you can't work live, because you can when you're doing testing, etc. Not having that debate today. But we become too maybe overly familiar with labels and signs, and we may not consider what's behind those signs and the context and the planning of the safe system of work. More importantly, everything I'm saying, it's about risk. So I'm kind of challenging the industry, really. We need to level up. We need to get far better at this. We need to review everything, because I have a simple view. If what we did works, I wouldn't be sat here now. Michael would still be alive. Okay? We wouldn't have the same stuff being recycled again and again and again and again. It's not acceptable. We've got to do better. And I'm sorry, but I'll say this on behalf of many people who've worked for many years in this industry. If you haven't experienced it, you can't manage it. And if you don't have the experience, stop managing it. We need more people in our industry to have more experience of what really goes on, rather than just the politics of it. Grenfell, as Clive Betts said, caused by an electrical fire. Okay, so where's the revolution and change in the industry then? Where's that coming from? So I have a simple formula that I use, and it's a non-mathematical one. It's competence and confidence divided by risk equals assurance. Because in the management, we use big terms, big words. They're great. We don't have competence, we don't have confidence. If you don't have confidence in what you're doing, how do you know what risk you've got? You work that formula out. Are you treating your known and unknown risk? Maybe not. How do you really know you've got assurance? I've recently asked and interviewed a number of electrical contractors, and I asked a simple question. What makes your business competent, and how do you look after competence of your individuals? None of those contractors could answer that question. That's a really serious indictment of our industry at the moment. These are not small contractors either. So competence is a big thing for me. People say you can't define it. It's a debate. It's a debate you have with yourself and your peers. So we all know the Deming's cycle on competence, unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know how to do something. I have been there, and I am there on various things in my life. I sit in every single one of these boxes in various tasks. I am unconsciously incompetent on social housing. I don't have any experience. I want to. And because I want to, I may be consciously incompetent. I know that I don't know how to do something, and it bothers me. If I went to work in social housing, I would start to become consciously competent. You know how to do something, it takes me great effort. And then the likes of the Ryan Dempseys and the others of the world in the social housing, the last guys, you know how to do something, second nature, you rocket it. But one thing we don't talk about enough in competence is how we define it. I use the term, thank you, Richard Emery, our Deputy Chair, SCATE, skills, knowledge, attitude, training, experience. And you can't have one without the other. Skills, to me, are practical skills in doing the work, application of the task. For electricians, physically doing it. Knowledge would be a peer-to-peer interview, assessment on site. Attitude is the ability to say no, the want to work safely. That is a key part of an attitude. You know, turning up, working safely, working smartly, appearance, everything. Attitude is key. Training is then the qualifications that underpin all that, whether it's HNC, sitting guilds, NVQ, whatever you've done. Add those four together, you then have the recipe for experience. Only when you can apply them can you be competent. Now, I challenge the industry to try and implement that in when you're assessing competence, because that, in my personal opinion, it should be. And also it's relative to the specific nature and hazards of the task and the subject matter, including the ability to say no. So I'm going to take you into, I'm winding this down now so that we can have some questions. But I get asked this all the time. Voluntary bodies, brands, who does what? So we have lots of logos, we have lots of brands, and they all do in their own rights a good job for their members and their people. I'm not taking that away from them, but we're still operating the same systems we did 20, 30 years ago. Resources and skills have dropped. Demand for skills have increased. All we've done to mitigate is short courses. We've brought people in, we've took their money, we've abandoned them. They then go to work in the workplace, and they may not be qualified to do it. And there is no gatekeeping, and that has got to change. So when I explain to my peers, my non-technical colleagues, who does what, this is how I convey it. Individual registration in some form, the GIB, SparkSafe, and the IET now offer obviously the EngTech Elec, of which I do work with them with. The contractor organisations, NIC, ECA and NAPIT, they are obviously contractor organisations, but the two trade associations, ECA, NAPIT, who are the people who engage with clients? SparkSafe, ECA, NAPIT and the IET. But which ones are representing the trade and the public good? So my company registered with NAPIT, they engage with me, and I think I'm one of the few people in the country who use SparkSafe. SparkSafe was the biggest eye-opener for my entire company ever, because what we did was we took a system that is fundamentally good, applied it, and found a lot of unknown risk in our supply chain that everything else that exists was not highlighting. And that unknown risk became a cost to me in reworks and potential breach in law from not having competent and qualified persons. So that to me is assurance. I use a SparkSafe license to practice, and I am desperate for the industry to level up and do something, and meaningfully do something. So I've written you a letter. Dear electrical industry, here are some of your risks. Please do something. And these are the risks that I see that are, if we solve these problems, no matter what laws are in place, you would solve a lot of problems in the electrical industry. Access to standards are too damn expensive. We keep producing books and all that good stuff. There's some great material out there. I'm not doubting that. Guidance is good to help develop an understanding of an engineering solution. But the current access to standards is woeful, and not one contractor I've ever asked in my entire career has copies of the standards they need to comply, which straight away as an unknown risk means my contractors can't actually comply. Even the standard offering at the moment are woefully insufficient. Standard changing, there's a lagging catch up. We're not doing enough. Competence of operatives. What is an electrician nowadays? We use the term operatives and multi-skilled operatives. There's no mandated CPD, and what constitutes it? The only constituted mandate is with the IET. I know because I assess it, and that's the T-Waves principle. Compliant materials and goods, as they've noted earlier on, we have a lot of rubbish on the market that when you go to a manufacturer and ask them for their technical file or look behind the CE marking, they don't have it, and then they just get very aggressive and angry with you and block you on social media or threaten to sue you. Training industry, the entrance to the industry, these short courses, people call them a cancer. The trouble is they're there, they're here. We need to help these people who have been led down a very unethical and disingenuous path into the industry. We need to help them to level up to get to a place where they have the available skills, qualifications, resources and experience. We need to help them, but we do need to stop that. We need to underpin and have a proper 5-year entrance into this industry. There is a lack of cohesion. All I ever see is industry bodies fighting. Sorry guys, but it's true. There's lots of underhanded fighting. You can use the term collaboration, but at the end of the day, every one of you is a profit-making organizations. Public knowledge is poor. We just get adverts, please use this registered contractor. And would it matter if the guy's been doing electrics for 2 weeks and is now installing my EV charging point? The latest legislation, which is fantastic, great legislation, because it's going to make people do testing. It's now created this race to the bottom, drive-by culture. I personally think Part P in its application has failed in some ways. It's been watered down. It's my personal opinion, and there are thousands of electricians out there that I've met that have all agreed. It needs to be more robust. We can't let the grey economy of our industry water stuff down. We've got to try and stop the DIYers, have a license to practice. People shouldn't be buying stuff in Screwfix anymore. The QS model, I don't know about you guys, but the QS model hasn't been fit for purpose since we went from inspection to assessing. That was the single biggest mistake that was made on the QS model. I was a QS. I was very proud to be a QS. I was inspected. Now that we're assessing people, I'm sorry, but we can argue till we're blue in the face. It's one person in a company being competent is not what I need. We're also finding the DNO networks from the pictures. They're failing. What is the industry doing? It's going to become an issue that is currently getting transferred onto the consumer and the contractor. And this is all risk, guys. Where's the books? Where's the guidance? Where's all the information on this? So I'm hoping in our ESR roundtable, we've got a massive portfolio of stuff to discuss and talk about to try and develop solutions to support people. So I'm going to end this, but I'm just going to end with if there's any employers out there that want to join us to have some fun and engaging debates about what we can do to inspire and influence and win over the hearts and minds of those who regulate our industry to change, walk the talk. Please join us. Please get in touch with the ladies and come and join us. Other than that, thank you very much. Is there any other questions? I suppose I better look at my screen now.
Hi, Paul. Sorry, was just trying to get Chris back in. But yeah, there are a few questions in the stage area under the Q&A, and I will try and get the...
Sorry, I wasn't focusing on them. I was just trying to get it done.
Yeah, that's all right.
Apologies, there was a lot in there, but something I'm very passionate about.
No, it was a great presentation.
Thank you.
I'm going to try and get Chris back in the meantime. Just bear me 2 seconds.
You can contact me if anybody wants to know any more, by the way. Is everybody in a stunned silence now? Am I just sitting here talking to myself?
Hi, Paul. No, I'm Charlotte here, sitting backstage. I'm going to jump on because we're struggling with Chris. So I'll take the lead to ask you a couple of questions in the last 5 minutes, if that's okay.
No worries.
So we've got one here from Phil Watts saying, one issue with electrical systems is that anyone can install and design that works. It takes a competent person to design, install, inspect, test and maintain a system that is safe and fit for purpose. So I suppose that's more of a comment than a question, but
no, it's a good comment though, because I agree, because I agree with what he said, because one of the things I'm doing this year is I'm introducing to Future Works an additional individual competency level to the license to practice that's available, and I also want to push that to designers, because one of the biggest challenges I have is designers not being competent, and I do spend a lot of my time helping and supporting them, because it's pointless kicking people. You have to take them on a guided journey. Otherwise you don't get anywhere. You don't get the right solution. So yeah, it's a valid point. I do think designers should be far more supported. And one of the things I do see in the supply chain is we spend billions on mega projects. And then when you go into the huge supply chain and huge management, somebody will say, oh, M&E, and there'll be one bloke who's got all this work to do and completely overwhelmed. And if he gets it wrong, we're in trouble. But more importantly, I'm getting a product based on his limited experience, not necessarily what the project demands. So yeah, there needs to be more intrusiveness on designers and support. And
Paul, thanks for the presentation, but we've got 2 questions that had already come in. What steps should be taken and by who to improve electrical safety in the workplace?
Hopefully we can do something, but I do really wish that government would actually level up and take some. It's either going to be government or HSE. The trouble is they're enforcing. They don't want to get involved, and they shouldn't, because these are private for-profit companies. This is why this is such a challenge from a committee perspective. Is the HSE will only ever get involved after the fact, not on a preventative, proactive approach. It's down to the competence of the employers. We need to do more to guide the competence of the employers or the person ordering the work. Electrical safety should not be just, something that engineering tribe do in the corner, pipes and wires stuff, which I've had in every single job I've ever had. And I have reasserted that we're not just a silly little silo tribe. We're actually really important, or I just switched them all off.
Okay. And the last question before we break, in your opinion, what is the main reason behind the inaction towards managing risk caused by electricity in the workplace?
Money and finance, incompetent leadership, and please don't take that the wrong way, anyone who I've ever worked for, but incompetent leadership, not understanding the full spectrum of risk, or trying to juggle such a volume of risk that they've had to, rightly so, risk prioritize, risk treat. And with electricity, if there's a problem with it, general risk treatment is just switch it off, take it out of service.
Yeah. Okay, Paul, thanks for your presentation. We now have to break till 14:45, when we'll come back and hear from Luke Spanton.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot, Paul, and thanks for your very comprehensive presentation.
Thank you.